a service of CNC Worldwide.
The Daily is a service of CNC News and Jib Jab greetings. I'm Bud Lowell. Your full AccuWeather forecast is right across the top of all CNC local news pages. The New York State Department of Labor says January was the 17th month in a row that the state added private sector jobs. That's the longest streak since the state Labor Department started tracking the numbers. New York State's economy added 29,600 jobs in January. Governor Cuomo's office says if you compare that to the national job growth figures, nearly 1 out of every 5 jobs added in the nation in January was in New York. Unfortunately, when you look at the Rochester metro area, the figures are not quite as encouraging. Rochester actually lost 600 jobs from January 2012 to January of this year. In Buffalo, during the same period, they added 4,900 jobs. The Ontario County Board of Supervisors is on record now in opposition to the New York SAFE Act, New York's tougher gun control law. Ontario is the 40th New York county to call for the repeal of NY SAFE. Town of Seneca Supervisor John Shepard introduced the resolution. All but 4 of the 21 supervisors supported it. Shepard says he hopes Governor Andrew Cuomo and the state legislature will take note and repeal the act. The Monroe County Legislature's Republican Party majority is expected to introduce a similar resolution next week. NY SAFE bans further sale of military-style semi-automatic rifles and shotguns having pistol grips. It also bans ammunition magazines that hold more than 7 rounds. People who already own the so-called assault weapons don't have to give them up, but do have to register them with law enforcement. Greece police say a child waiting for a school bus was approached by a suspicious person this week. They're asking anyone with information to call 911. They say a bald man wearing a red jacket approached the child on the 2000 block of Maiden Lane at about 8 o'clock Wednesday morning while the child was waiting for the school bus. The child ran into their house. The man left the area a few minutes later. Police say he was in a maroon color Ford Explorer with gold trim. A study of local emergency medical services concludes that the more than 50 ambulance and emergency response agencies across Monroe County need some coordination in order to work in the best interest of patients. It concludes the county EMS office should have the authority to set and enforce uniform standards and to coordinate ambulance and fire agencies countywide. County officials hired an outside consultant last May to perform the study. The final report says lack of coordination keeps the local EMS delivery system from meeting nationally accepted standards for response time and for delivery of emergency medical services. The report says emergency medical care is not getting to patients at a consistent level across the county. Ambulance care varies from basic emergency to advanced life support depending on location and the agency that responds. Some agencies actually respond faster than national average, others are slower than average, some by several minutes. The report says there is no actual EMS system for Monroe County. Each agency has its own standards and practices, its own advisory body. It finds there's no verifiable data on the performance of the county's 911 dispatch center. And it says too often the closest appropriate ambulance cannot be dispatched to a request for service because of an arbitrary line on a map that designates a particular address as another agency's territory. And this is because of the way New York requires ambulance agencies to be set up. They have to cover a specific area. The report concludes fewer ambulances could actually make faster response times with better overall management if there was one countywide system. Local EMS agencies agree with some of the findings, including the closest ambulance not always being able to answer the call, but many question the report's data on response times. The roof comes off the old East Avenue Wegmans store this weekend. Literally, demolition begins on the old store Saturday. It closed last month to make way for the nearly complete new Wegmans. The old one becomes the new parking lot site. Crews will start tearing out the roof, steelwork, and the wall along East Avenue on Saturday. The rest of the building follows over the next week, and the new Wegmans opens May 19th. The United Way of Greater Rochester wants to raise $26 million in the annual spring campaign. That's $500,000 more than last year. 2013 Community Campaign Chairman Joel Seligman says the focus this year is basic community needs, including supporting seniors and caregivers, giving babies a good start, and preparing children for success. Seligman, who's also president of the University of Rochester, says United Way has requests for support already in hand, asking for more than $28.6 million to meet various needs. And the United Way community supports more than 70 local social services. Speaking of the University of Rochester, a man who had a lot to do with shaping the university and with Rochester's healthcare system has died. Robert Hurlbut died unexpectedly at his home in Honeoye Falls Monday. He was 77 years old. Mr. Hurlbut was an entrepreneur, an educator, a state official, and an innovator in the care of older Americans. He also supported Rochester cultural institutions and the University of Rochester for decades. As the head of a major elder care corporation, he was a big driver of the change from the old nursing home model to the senior living community model. He was also a trustee of the University of Rochester Medical Center for 23 years, and he served for a decade on the university's board. Thursday evening's rush hour was not a lot of fun for those trying to navigate Rochester's expressways. A car heading east on 490 blew a tire about 4 p.m. near the Mount Read Boulevard off-ramp. That triggered a crash involving 4 cars and an RTS bus. This in turn stalled traffic on 490 and on 390 trying to get onto 490. Police had to close off the 390 southbound ramp to 490 east, and that confused southbound traffic as well. The northbound traffic on 390 backed up past the airport for about an hour. A few people were taken to the hospital to be checked out, but police said nobody was seriously injured. To the left of the player window are links to these and several other stories, and at the bottom of the page, links you can use to post news and information directly to us. We keep working on the CNC pages. Search function is now active for looking at past stories. Next news is as it happens, updates are as necessary, and I'm Bud Lowell, CNC News.